Hi and welcome. You are listening to the Get Into Your Skin podcast, where we talk anything and everything skincare and mental health. Each week, we'll explore inner and outer beauty at the intersection of a medically informed point of view and the curiosity of a skincare amateur. Speaking of which, I'm one of your hosts, Isabella Turios, said skincare amateur, and I'm excited to introduce my co-host, Dr. Kumar Nadan, a dermatology resident in Chicago. Hi, Kumar.
Hi there. Super excited for today.
Yeah, this is another heavy hitter. We promised a follow-up acne episode, which will come once my sister gets back from her honeymoon. But today we're talking about SPF and skin cancer. And I think right now SPF is at least very popular in like the social media world. I've seen so many TikToks about how like you're so much better than other people if you apply your SPF, or like
You are.
the feelings you get. Yeah. Or the feeling that you get of like horror when you're like, oh my God, it's 5 p.m. and I didn't reapply it. Am I old now? So let's talk about it. What does SPF stand for? What does it mean?
Do you have any guesses?
I did have sun protection factor.
That's it. That's a good guess. And
I knew sun protection and then factor, because it usually comes in 30, 50, whatever, right? So
yeah.
And we think that, I mean, I personally do like a 50 on my face and then 30 on the rest of my body. I remember because I had this friend who would wear, this is in middle school, she was way ahead of the curve, but she would wear 100 SPF. And I just remember like telling my mom, like, well, she has 100, I have 50, like what's the issue here? And she's like, I don't think there's a huge difference. Like, is the factor increasing like double, is that like double protection, or is it not really that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So sun protection factor, it is a multiple. And so what the definition is the amount of time it takes for you to get red or burnt.
Oh.
And so normally for very white skin, it takes about 10 minutes for you to get a little red. Let's say ginger being the stereotype. It takes about 10 minutes. If you have an SPF of 15, you have 15 times the amount of time. So it's 150 minutes, 15 times 10.
Sorry. Okay, this is math. Why times 10? Or like
times 10 because 10 is the baseline. Without any sunscreen, it takes about 10 minutes for you to get burnt if you are very, very light skinned. And if you have an SPF of 15 on, it will take 150 minutes.
Okay. So say SPF 0 is basically none.
Yeah.
You're going to watch me do math here. So if you do 100, it's just, so it's not that it protects you more, it's that it protects you for a longer period of time.
A bit of both. And so it does protect you for a longer period of time if it was in a sterile setting in a lab. And it also protects you a bit more. So SPF of 15 protects you about 95, 96% of the way. SPF of 30 is 97%, SPF of 50 is 98%, and it goes up from there. So really we're cutting hairs when we're talking about if it's stronger or not. And then in terms of time, if you are baking in the sun, yes, a stronger SPF is better. But if we are moving around throughout the day and we have sweat and dirt and the environment and everything, and our own cells, we're rubbing our face or parts of our body where we have sunscreen, we're removing that layer. So we really can't take it as a total amount of time. It's more the total amount of UV dosage is the measurement. And so 150 minutes versus 300 minutes, SPF 15 versus 30 of a UV dose to cause erythema. So lot of factors involved there.
Yeah.
Simplified is that SPF 15 and greater is where you want to be.
Okay.
And it lasts for about 2 hours.
And so it's not really like a marketing device. That's what I thought. It's like I see the 50 next to the 100, that you just feel better getting the 100, but it does seem like it is actually more powerful.
It is more powerful. Yeah, absolutely. When it comes down to it, in a lab, it is more powerful. Now that is in a lab. That is if you wear it exactly how they tested it in a lab and you have no other factors affecting you. Is the SPF 50 is better than the SPF 30 is better than the SPF 15 in terms of protection and time. But we are not in a lab and there's so many other factors and human errors involved with sunscreen usage. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a job if it were that easy to use.
Really? Now I'm thinking like, okay, so when I wear a mask, when I take it off, do I need to put it? You know what I mean?
That's
Like when you
good.
go outside with a mask, it's rubbing off my SPF.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, you're actually right. It does rub off a little SPF, but the mask gives you some protection because it's blocking the
Yeah,
sun. So
yeah.
it balances out.
What do you use? What SPF number?
That's a good question. I use SPF. I think mine is right now 30.
Okay. And I think I put this in a later question, but why do we I'm saying we, just assuming that everyone does the same thing I do, but I put a higher SPF number, or just SPF? Is that like saying factor number? Like, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Higher SPF on my face than I do on my body. And I don't know if it's because I'm just more vain and worried that, you know, the sun damage will show on my face, or is it that the skin of the face is like more vulnerable to the sun?
I think both. I think we are more vain. Our face is what's more important to us, but also our face is where the majority of skin cancers happen. If we're talking about lighter skin, we're talking about sun exposed sites, especially on the face, because you wear long sleeves sometimes, you're wearing coats, but your face is always exposed. And
Okay.
so winter, summer, spring, day, evening, you are getting sun.
Okay. My sister was saying that the most common place to get, so she's wrong, skin cancer was like the back of the leg, because that's where people forget to put on sunscreen. Is that a myth?
That might be a myth. I rarely see skin cancer on the back of the leg.
Yeah, because
Uh,
we're
it,
wearing pants, and I just believed it.
it does show up there, and maybe that is a common place to get skin cancer that is not expected, but the face carries a lot of risk.
Okay. Yeah, you're right, because it's the one that's more exposed. I think also I always forget to get like the back of my ears. And I'm like, I'm getting skin cancer in the back of my ears.
Yes,
Okay,
the
here's,
back of the ears.
I think we've spoken before that I'm a little bit like hypochondriac. So it's probably fine. Like we have hair, you know, it's like the body isn't just like waiting to burn, right? Like we need
Yeah,
SPF, but it's not like if you don't wear it, you're done.
yeah, absolutely. And it depends who you are, right? If you are a bald male, your ears are very exposed, and so is your head. But as a female, they experience much less skin cancer on the back of the ears because you have hair, like you said.
Oh.
So you do
Do you
have
ever get
protection.
skincare in the scalp? Like I've had, you know, it's no one puts SPF in the middle part. I'm showing this on the YouTube. Good time to plug the YouTube, but it's a podcast. So like if I part my hair down the middle, that sometimes burns.
That is a very good point. Now, if you consistently wear your part in the middle, which most people don't wear a consistent part in the middle throughout their life, you will get consistent sun exposure to that area, and then it puts you at risk. But if you're moving your hair around, and if you don't do your hair some days, you're wearing a cap, you're inside, or you change your hairstyle throughout your life,
Yeah.
which often happens, you don't get as much exposure as you would think to that center part. But yeah, you technically should be putting sunscreen there.
Yeah. I've definitely had that, like been to a music festival where you're just outside in the sun all day and then it just like burns. But hats.
Hats. Yeah, you gotta wear fun hats at music festivals. Just take advantage of it.
Yeah.
I
Just
was never a big hat guy.
not Native American headdresses, please.
Yes, yeah, there's no Native American headdresses.
Okay. What are the different types of SPF? Because I've heard the term like mineral SPF thrown around. Don't really know what it means. I think you mentioned tinted at one point.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it's a popular topic right now. There's a couple main forms of SPF. One is, and I'm going to use SPF and sunscreen interchangeably.
Yeah.
A couple main forms. One is chemical sunscreens. They are often the benzones, oxybenzone, avobenzone. You'll see a lot of percentages and letters and O's and A's and Z's on your ingredient list. And it's usually about 4 to 6 ingredients, and they look like scary chemicals. And they're chemicals. At the end of the day, they are chemicals. A couple of them are active chemicals, and a couple several of them will be stabilizers, because the active ones cannot survive on their own. And so the stabilizers are also involved in the ingredient list because they are there in substantive quantities, but they may not be doing anything directly. So those are chemical sunscreens. They mostly absorb the sun. They completely absorb the sun. That's their main function. The other big category of sunscreen is mineral sunscreen. So that is zinc and titanium in the US. And those not only absorb sun, but they also reflect or scatter sunlight. And so they have an added benefit, which is amazing. They're often also called inorganic sunscreens. And it's an interesting word. It's kind of ironic because the chemical sunscreens are called organic, and then the mineral sunscreens are called inorganic. It's a bit of a misnomer. I think people like to imply that the chemical ones are natural, but that's not. They're chemicals. They're very complex chemicals that are constructed.
And it sounds like, oh, my sunscreen is organic.
Yes, yeah. And a lot of people think it's a marketing tool that they use this organic. And for a long time, chemical was popular because it was very creamy. It was easy to put on. Mineral sunscreen or inorganic sunscreen gets its name because they're pretty much rocks. Zinc and titanium are just pebbles, very, very microscopic pebbles that we're putting on our skin. They do not absorb into the system at all. So in terms of organic, that is the safest, most organic or natural way to put on sunscreen, is literally put a rock in front of your face. It doesn't absorb. In terms of allergic reactions, there's a lot of allergic reactions to the chemicals in chemical sunscreen. Contact irritation, photosensitized reactions with those chemicals. But with mineral sunscreen, there are none. Because again, you're putting a rock in front of your face. There's nothing that's going to mix in with your skin. There's nothing that's mixing in with your blood. It is the most natural and organic as it gets. And so that is what I prefer. I think that is now becoming a social media darling as well, as it should, and it's gaining popularity. The problem with mineral sunscreen until this point is that, like putting rocks on your face, it is not that nice. It's not aesthetically pleasing. It's not easy to rub in.
It sounds like when you said that, it sounded really abrasive, but it is or no? I mean, when you say rocks, when you're rubbing rocks, I'm like, oh.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and you shouldn't be rubbing it in because we're not using it as an active ingredient to enhance our skin. It should just be slathered on top, right? Like just like frosting on a cake, right? You're not trying to penetrate the cake, you're just trying to put it on top. And so it shouldn't be abrasive. Maybe in microscopic level it is, but it will not be abrasive for most people. And when we're putting the rock on top of our skin, it doesn't absorb in like the chemicals do. And so it often leaves a white cast. And formulations have gotten much, much better. And they've started to make smaller particles. Smaller particles are less effective and they don't scatter as much light, but they're easier to put on. And they have these smaller particles. They have nicer, more elegant formulations that allow us to use the mineralized sunscreens much easier. The tinted is an extra bonus. Tinted gives it a cafe brown appearance that mixes in. I'm currently wearing tinted mineral sunscreen, and it is very difficult to tell. I wear it every day. My patients cannot tell. And it takes away that, prevents that white cast, and it gives you a nice layer on top, kind of like makeup, where it gives you a nice even coating. And this is as much makeup as I wear, so I can't speak to it fully, but it is a nice additional layer on top of your skin. And it gives an added benefit for skin of color people. Tinted reflects blue light, which causes tanning and dyspigmentation in skin of color.
Okay. So when you say it reflects, it's literally like the sun hitting and pushing out. Are you shiny? No, you're not shiny.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And it comes in different colors, or?
That's a good question. So right now, there's not too many different colors at play. I believe some lines are developing it for different skin palettes, but usually a brown mix is enough. It'll mix in well enough. And so
Okay.
even though the tinted sunscreen that I use is not my exact color, it is not
Okay.
noticeable.
Because with foundation, with makeup, it's like very important to get the right shade.
Hmm.
Speaking of, there was a little incident at my sister's wedding where they did my makeup and I looked like I saw a ghost. And I was like, you have to redo this. So it's just like I'm thinking, okay, if I put on tinted, like, does it need to match, or it just kind of like blends in? You know what I mean? Like you don't have
It's a
to
good
find your
question.
shade.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
good question. I may not be fully aware of all the shades out there and if the shade that I like works for you. As far as I've
Right.
seen, a tinted sunscreen works for most people, but
Okay.
your skin, you're in between, right? You have a very light brown tint to your skin. And so a tinted sunscreen, I would wonder if it's too dark for you. I don't think it would be, but it's
I've
possible.
used one. I can't even plug it. I think it's like BBC or something like that, but it's like it has a
Mhm.
golden tint, and I just look very golden. It's like people are like, "Why are you glowing?" I'm like, I know, it didn't seem natural, but it was kind of fun because you're just like shining.
Like a
Um,
bronzer kind of
it
golden.
was literally like golden. I can actually grab it because I stopped using it. It was like too much, too much
That is really
attention.
interesting. I would love to see it
Yeah,
or hear about it
yeah.
later. There are some people. So color is a really interesting thing. We talk about skin color as in white or brown or black, and,
Mhm,
and and or yellow, right? If you have an Asian background. But in reality, a lot of the darker skin tones have a golden background, and a
mhm,
lot of the whiter skin tones have a red background underneath.
mhm.
And
Okay.
so, and this is probably well known in makeup, right? As
Mhm.
you use the correct makeup, it brings out that glow. And so, I would be not be surprised if newer and newer formulations of mineralized sunscreen come out, or tinted sunscreen, chemical or mineralized, that come out, which bring out those colors very well.
Yeah, I'm not a huge I don't know a lot about makeup. Um, but Instagram has these very fun like ads for things. I think we talked about it where you're like, I live in this place and da da da, and I want these hair goals, and then they give you a product that's like made for you. I did one like that for a foundation, and actually was like kind of amazing that the algorithm on a computer without looking at me can ask me all these questions, and then they send me the perfect shade, like
Huh.
truly perfect. Like I was shocked. It's like ILKMAKIAGE. I would plug them for the 5 people that listen. No, I'm kidding. But one of the questions was to look at your wrist and see if the veins were more blue and green versus more blue and purple, kind of to
Huh.
determine what you're talking about. Like if you're a more like golden, you're like red bluish person. I don't know if that makes
Yeah.
any sense, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I
Absolutely. Very
because
cool.
it they always tell you in makeup like what are your tones, kind of like if and it's hard to know, so I'll look it up later and explain, but it's like, yeah, you look at your veins and the colors there's tell you if you should wear more like, for example, for blush, if you should wear pink, or more if you're the other tone, you should wear more like coral, like more orangey base versus like, or like if blue looks good on you versus like orange, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
I don't know. But yeah, but it was really shocking that, I mean, algorithms are scary, but they're kind of great.
Yeah. Yeah, they're great and they're getting better. And I think we're also getting better, and there's more intention to work with the colors now that a lot of skin and color people are coming to the table and demanding it. And I think that's necessary because till now, cosmetic companies, beauty companies have gotten away with just the chemical sunscreens. And
Mm.
mostly because sunscreens are more important for whiter people.
Okay, like because the chemical. Wait, you mentioned this before and I didn't follow up. So the UV light, the blue UV light affects. brown and black skin more than white people. Is that what you're saying?
It affects all of us,
Okay.
but the pigmentation issues that result from blue light affect skin of color people more.
Okay. Okay.
And so if we are using sunscreen on a daily basis, not only does it prevent skin cancer for us, not only does it prevent aging, but it also helps extremely well with pigmentation issues.
I see. So what you're saying is one, the chemical is typically more helpful for white people, and then the other one. Okay, now it's clicking.
Yeah, I think they're both very helpful for lighter skin, for white skin, but mineral sunscreen is much more helpful than chemical when it comes to darker skin.
Okay.
It
Yeah,
has
I hadn't
much
heard
more
about
benefits.
that at all. Okay.
Yeah. And in general, I would suggest mineral sunscreen. Even the chemical sunscreens, it's rare to find now, but they don't protect for the full spectrum. Not all of them are broad spectrum. And so there's different parts of UV light, UVA and UVB, and UVA is split into two different parts as well, that affect our skin and damage our skin. And sunscreens, chemical sunscreens, often only protect for one of those two parts of the UV light spectrum.
Is one of those coming from our computers and screens?
The blue light comes from our computers and screens. And
Okay.
so that's where the tinted comes in.
Okay, so we should be wearing SPF if we're just inside looking at our phone under the covers because you're hungover.
You won't get skin cancer from your screen, but for pigmentation issues, it definitely
No,
helps
but
if
remember,
you wear
I
a
want
little
to be
sunscreen.
like looking like a fetus. So
Yeah, sunscreen all day, all day.
okay. Yeah. And this is okay. So one of my questions was like, how often should we apply it, and does it make a difference if we're indoors, or like I mentioned another episode, the guy was like, well, it's foggy, I live in San Francisco, it's like, where's the sun, like, is it here? So I mean, I'm sure it makes a difference, but like, should we still be reapplying it as often if we're out on a snowy day?
On a snowy day, yes, especially on a snowy day, I think. San Francisco is a tough one. Yes, it does get foggy often. If you see blue in the sky, you should be wearing sunscreen.
Blue? Oh, like a daylight?
Blue in the sky. Yeah, any daylight. If there's daylight in the sky and you see blue, you should wear sunscreen. Gray is a tough one because it's technically no blue, and San Francisco's gray often, but it's usually not fully gray. Usually there's some blue in there. It's all mixed together. It's like a Bob Ross painting. You have different colors come together.
And it's also not dark, right? Like the sun is there. I don't like the sun seems more powerful than clouds.
Exactly. The sun is there and the sun reflects, right? And that's why inside you're not safe from it completely, is because the sun is reflecting through the windows. It's reflecting off the snow on the ground, and it's reflecting off the lake. So oftentimes when we go to Tahoe or we go to into the mountains or on the lake, we get more sun than we expect, because not only are you getting the sun from above, but you're getting the sun from below because there's reflection. So it's oftentimes twice.
Does it reflect off like pavement too?
Yes.
Everything.
Reflects off everything.
Now I'm gonna be so scared. What is that movie with like Adam Sandler where there's a guy who's like scared of the sun? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do not.
I'm gonna be that guy. But it has to do with football. This is how little I know of Adam Sandler in sports movies. Do you know what I'm talking about? Bench?
I know what you're talking about.
Bench something?
Not The Longest Yard, is it?
Maybe. I don't want okay, let's move on. This is embarrassing. But there's a guy who's like afraid of the sun, and he's just wearing like all the SPF. It goes out like screaming. That's gonna be me. So how often should we reapply it? I guess if you're like swimming or sweating, you kind of want to do that. But if you're inside on a 9-to-5 job or working from home, like what is recommended?
I am very happy if my patients and clients wear sunscreen every day in the morning. And I am absolutely thrilled if they put it on one more time at lunch or before they leave the office.
Okay.
I think that is, you get an A. If you want an A plus, and nobody needs an A plus every single day, you'd be applying it every 2 hours. But that's not ideal,
Yeah.
because over time you're going to get exhausted, right?
Yeah, it also like piles on if you have too much product. Like I've reapplied sunscreen like too quickly if I'm gonna go out like skating or something, and it's just like gunk.
Yeah,
I don't know.
absolutely. It's not practical. And so we need to integrate it into our lives. And so in order to integrate it into our lives, if you have an SPF of 15 that is mineral and is tinted, and I'm talking for mostly skin of color, SPF of 15, you are fine. You're great. You're not going to be sweating that off. That mineral is just going to stay on your face until you wash it off. And it is reflecting the sun all day. So that is what you want. And then if you apply it one more time, good on you. Awesome. But I will go throughout a whole day very comfortably, having just applied it in the morning, and I'm very happy with myself. If I am playing sports or I'm outside and I'm running around, I'm doing it every 2 hours. And that's pretty religiously, just because you're going to sweat off quite quickly, regardless if it's mineral or chemical. If you're
What if
using
it's
chemical
waterproof?
sunscreen, if it's waterproof, that is actually tested, and it has to be in order to label it that way, then it will sustain some sweating, but you're still going to sweat it off.
I also, you look at a bottle that says waterproof, it still says like reapply every like 90 minutes or something like that. So I'm like
Yeah.
really like I think it
Yeah,
kind of gives you a false sense of confidence because it says waterproof. You're
exactly.
like, eh,
Yeah, it's like your
yeah.
phone, right? Until they came out with these, even now, I'm not going to go throw my phone into the water, even though it's waterproof. It's up to a
Yeah.
certain extent.
Yeah.
It's just like, if a water splashes on you, you don't have to worry too much. But if you are running around, you're sweating continuously, or you're going swimming, it is coming off.
Okay. Okay. I feel like I interrupted you. We're gonna say something.
No, you're okay. I don't know what I was going to say, but I will say, now that I was thinking about it, is that our natural SPF is different. And so it depends what goal you're going for. If you are ginger, right? If you are, and I just have a soft spot for gingers, and partly my past and partly because of my work. But let's say you're a ginger, you're very, very light skin, right? Red eye, red hair, blue eyes, freckles. Your SPF is near 0 to 3. And if you are trying to prevent skin cancer from chronic sun exposure, you're going to want to apply SPF 30 every single day, multiple times a day, ideally, and especially if you're out and about. But if you are darker skin, as dark as you are, or as dark as I am, especially as dark as I am less worried about sun damage and skin cancer. I'm more worried about dyspigmentation. And my natural SPF is much higher than that of a red haired, blue eyed person. And so I have a boost to start the day with. And so I don't need SPF 30 every single day. If I wear it, awesome. But I don't need it. If I wear SPF 15 every single day, that is much better than if I wear SPF 30 once in a while.
Okay.
So the game is
Consistency
about consistency. Absolutely.
and like math, kind of like
Mhm.
right.
Yeah. End of the day, it all
Yeah.
adds up.
Yeah. I have a few questions. One is more related to that part. The other one is, what about, how do you feel about spray SPF?
I do not feel good about spray SPF.
Okay, because we're talking about having the sunscreen fit into people's lives, and women, for the most part, like if they want to be taken seriously professionally or whatever, they have to wear makeup.
Mhm.
And putting on sunscreen on top of the makeup ruins it. So I feel like the spray one is pretty helpful in that because it kind of doesn't, it just lands and sits on your face as opposed to you having to like rub things. And now with makeup there's like you can't just rub.
Yeah.
um I'm guessing it's like better than nothing, but it doesn't sound like, do you have to put on a lot for it to work? Or
That's a good question. And you're right, it is better than nothing, right? If you spray every single day, I'm still going to be proud of you because it's better than not doing it at all. But it is hard to get all the parts of your skin with the spray. And not only is it difficult to get every square centimeter, it is also not thick enough to
Hmm.
prevent any sun damage. So in general, the thicker the sunscreen, water and oil immersions rather than oil and water immersions, the thicker the sunscreen, the more defense you have.
Got
And
it.
it's pretty much intuitive. And that is actually true. And the spray is so light and it's so nice, but at the same time, it's exposing you to a lot of damage. But I completely understand how difficult it is to use some of these sunscreens. They used to be goop, right? Like back in the day when we were kids, they were green and purple, and they've
Yeah.
come a long way, but it's still not
Yeah.
easy. So when you use sunscreen, or sorry, makeup, when's the best place to put on the sunscreen? And don't some of the makeups have the sunscreen in them?
So I think the tinted one you could use as a foundation. What I do if I'm doing like a full day out, whatever, I'll wake up, I'll do my, 10-step skincare routine, finish it off with makeup, wait for it to like dry, and then put on makeup, all of it on top.
Hmm.
And I think that's what you're supposed to do. Again, like sometimes the sunscreen with the liquid foundation creates like little goops. It's not great. So you have to like really wait a long time, which is kind of like if you're in a rush or something, it's like annoying. But then when you reapply it, it has to go on top of everything. And that's when I go for the spray because yeah, you do want to put on the SPF before you do on the makeup, but it's more like the reapplying that's kind of like a nightmare. They also are selling
Mm.
these like so there's a thing called like a primer, which is a spray that you put on after the makeup to make it stick. So now they're selling primer with SPF, but it's you can't put on if you put on too much, then you're just wetting your face. So it sounds like it's like not really that effective.
Yeah, I really wonder how effective these are. I mean, ultimately, you need enough on you, right?
Right. That if I do sometimes I put on a lot of the spray and it just becomes as if I put on regular because it's so much, right? I think that's kind of
Hmm.
how much you need probably. But if you're doing the spray, you don't want to wet your face when it's covered in makeup because then it's all gonna run. So you just go like like that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it sounds nice, and again, better than nothing. I often tell patients that sunscreen is like nutrition, right? If you are like, let's say your vegetables, if you are using sunscreen every day, that is the same as eating your vegetables every day. It's not fun. Nobody likes doing it, but eventually you get used to it. You appreciate it, and eventually you like it, right? And it's hard to do when you're a kid, but it gets much easier and easier when you are getting older. And if you are able to eat perfectly every single day, you will not have any other problems health wise, right? That's now the going understanding, right? Everyone accepts that. Same thing with sunscreen. If you're using it every day, you're preventing so much sun damage. You're preventing pigmentation issues. You're preventing strain on your body, inflammation. There's so much going on for your skin. That is taking care of 90% of your problems with your skin if you're using the sunscreen properly. And if you are using these substitutes, it's the same as when you go get a green drink at the store, right? It has like
okay.
3 pieces of kale in it. It's like, yeah, it's better than
And apple
nothing.
juice or something.
And apple
Yeah,
juice, right? And a lot of it's water and sugar. It's better than nothing, but it's not like eating the real thing.
got it. That makes sense. And then you mentioned freckles caused by the sun.
Freckles are a reaction to the sun.
Really? Okay. It's funny. I don't know if you know this, but in the makeup world, they're coming back. So usually you put on foundation to cover all the sunspots or freckles.
Uh-huh.
And now they're selling these little pens, different colors, and then you like put it on top of your nose. And, like just people are putting on fake freckles. After I had freckles after we've been trying to like cover them up for years and years and years, and now people are drawing them on. It's really
Now they're
wild.
in vogue. I find freckles very endearing. I think they're very adorable, and it's a natural, nice mark, especially of like young, healthy people, right, who are in the sun a lot. I think it's very endearing, and I'm glad it's coming back, but it's a little ridiculous that it's in vogue enough to draw
Well,
on.
I tried them. Like, so
Uh-huh.
I had to put on the foundation, get rid of them, and then draw them on. and you kind of want to put them on in this, like you said, endearing, right? It's like you're going for the cute look. The
Uh-huh.
Gen Zs are very like perfecting, and I don't know if this is just a trend or I'm gonna get real dark, like like Hollywood sexualizing children, kind of like we want people to look younger, and like girls who are like 17 are in the cover of all the magazines, and they're like the pinnacle of sexuality, and you're like, but they're a child. So they're kind of doing a lot of like hard blush up here. So you look like a
Uh-huh.
little like sun kissed, or like you're blushing, and then you put on the
Right.
little freckles, and it gives you a very youthful look, which I think is
Yeah.
adorable. I liked it. I tried it. No one mentioned the freckles. I think we already have them, so it doesn't seem like a surprise. But it does feel a little bit like, is this like a Lolita? Like, am I trying to look like a baby?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I never thought of it that way.
yeah,
Yeah, but it is,
you
it
look
does
like
remind me of like high school.
yeah, or
Right.
like the strawberry shortcake. That's what I
Yes.
felt like,
Yeah.
because I put on like a lot of blush and then like little freckles. I was like goo goo gaga. Am I cute now? Like, what's
Right.
happening?
Yeah.
But it is interesting. I don't know if it's a
Yeah, it
good thing
is
or a
really
bad
interesting.
thing.
Yeah, I think Gen Z is very impressive how creative they can be with these trends, and they switch them so fast.
No, but it's. I mean, I follow some TikTok makeup trends, and it's called like e-girl cute.
Hmm.
Doja Cat like put up a, Doja Cat, the singer.
It,
And she put up
it's
a
it sounds
YouTube on like
familiar.
how to do it, and it's just covering your face in makeup. And she said like you kind of want to look like you were out in the cold and you just like blew your nose, or like you were in the sun for too long. It looks like you have a fever, and that's kind of the look that we're going for. And I say we because I want to be Gen Z, even though I'm not. But
And
it's
it
literally
looks
like, oh, I
good.
have a fever. I think it looks super cute, but like sometimes you go out into like the daylight and you're like, oh my god, I do look like I have a fever.
That it's yeah, that's so
Oh,
interesting.
so this is
I
a
think the
fun
rosy
tidbit.
nose, right?
Yeah.
Rosy cheeks.
Well, this is a fun tidbit. Do you know of consumption chic?
No.
Consumptive chic. So in like, oh, I'm gonna get the dates wrong. Like 1800s, there was a lot of tuberculosis, which became sort of like the ideal in beauty for women. So when you have tuberculosis, you become very thin and frail. You become
Oh.
very pale. You're you get very blushy, like because you're running a low fever basically like all the time. Your eyes get very glassy and like because of the fever as well. And that just became like the ideal of beauty, which is why people invented blush and like rouge. And there's a whole book on like consumptive chic and how it kind of has stayed on since.
Huh.
Like if you look at paintings, they have like very like blushing cheeks and like the. I mean, obviously now with the with the Kardashians, I'm kidding. Like the more voluptuous woman is coming back, but for a long time it was like heroin chic, and it's kind of just an evolution of consumptive chic, where like you kind of want women to be this like ethereal, fragile creatures that just kind of like and so
Hmm.
when they're ill, they look like that,
Right. Oh,
and
that
it's
is
very
so interesting.
romanticized, very romanticized.
I heard recently that the like voluptuous, curvy is back, and I heard that within the last couple months. But hasn't the Kardashians been a thing for the last decade? Has it not been a thing for the last few years?
I would say yeah, but even the Kardashians have gotten more voluptuous themselves. Like their
Okay.
bodies have been changing a lot. And I mean, obviously with you can talk about like if it's Photoshop or surgery or whatever. But Kim Kardashian did not start out with a body that she has now. I also think
Hmm.
it's like they very much have borrowed from Black culture to make like a big ass become like a popular thing, and that the Kardashians are Armenian, I think. So they kind of took aspects of Black women and put it on their own bodies and kind of made it popular, which some people like criticize them for that, rightly so, because they're profiting off of that. But it also has kind of opened up the doors for that to become part of like media now. Like I don't think I heard growing up that anyone was like an ass guy. Like it was boobs, it was big boobs, right?
Yeah,
And
as
now it's
American Ideal.
right, big boobs, and in the movies, big boobs, and especially like those 90 comedies or whatever. Now it's like
Right.
a fat ass. Now we're getting really graphic, but like that is kind of like now, like Nicki Minaj, Anaconda. Like now it's like big. Or
Right.
was it Cardi B that had a no? Lizzo had a giant ass on stage. Someone had a giant ass. So it's just kind of like um it's interesting because there is sort of this celebration of a different body type. There is that isn't like a very white centric, you know, thin beauty ideal, but it also is just another unattainable goal, right? Like
Yeah.
like if you're not like super thin and skinny, or now like really thin people are like, well, I can't get a giant ass, I'm gonna have to surgically put it on my body and then have like back issues, which is what people were doing with boobs as well. It's just like,
Right.
I don't know, it on the one hand I'm like, great, there's more diversity that is being celebrated, but you also have to be like, have a flat tummy. Like um Rihanna has gone through a lot of weight fluctuations, and she was criticized at one point. She's like, you can't ask someone to have a big ass like me and then not have a tummy. It's like, that's just how fat works in the body.
Yeah.
So it's like, now you have to have like abs and a big ass. It's like, how do you get that? It's like, for some people that's genetically possible. For like the majority of people, it's just not. I don't know.
Without surgery.
I just exhausted myself.
It does sound very exhausting. And I say it all the time, like the beauty ideals are so unrealistic, exhausting, and also skewed towards female population. I think it's more exhausting for them, and it's more critical of them. And I cannot imagine what it's
I
like.
feel like it is definitely targeted at women. I think there's a lot of money that can be made from it. I also think it's like by the male gaze with Z, because the gays also have a lot of issues with body image. So I don't think it's like women are more susceptible to it. It's like men put it on other people. No, I'm kidding. But it's like, no, like definitely there has been more centuries of like women being as objects, so you have to look a certain way. But the body dysmorphia and eating disorder rates are like skyrocketing among gay men. Also,
Mm.
the whole like youth thing, like think women, like when men age, we're like, oh, he ages like a fine wine. Like you look at Brad Pitt, I think he looks hotter now than he did 30 years ago. But the women who age well just look young, you know? You're not like, ooh, look at that silver hair, like blah blah. It's like, oh, Jennifer Lopez is 50 and looks like she's 30. That's aging
Right.
well. Whereas George Clooney, you're like, ooh, salt and pepper, blah blah. But with gay men, there's also a huge emphasis on like being young and feeling irrelevant once you sort of like age out of like your
Yeah.
20s, 30s.
Right. Right. Yeah. I've said it, I think, before on here, and I've definitely said it elsewhere, is that I love gay men skin. I think they have some secret in terms of hormonal balance, and also the aggressiveness in which they do skincare and exfoliate and do a lot of stuff that they have. And also they use makeup that we do not have access to, I think, as heterosexual men, in terms of knowledge. Like it's just not in our, I don't function in that context on a day-to-day basis. And they do it in such an impressive way, and I love what they do with their skin. But I can totally see that they are wrapped up in that pressure as well. Yeah,
Right.
it makes
It's like,
sense. They're
I
functioning in
feel
the
like
same.
I feel like some of us who I'm gonna lump myself in with the gays, who are just like very aggressive about our skincare, and like it's good in a lot of ways because then you have like healthy whatever. But it comes sometimes from a dark place, and I'm not saying that for all of them, but like for me, it's definitely like this fear of aging, right? Like when I say I want to look like a fetus, it's like I don't think it's so much vanity. It is vanity, but there's also just like the understanding that like once you hit a certain age as a woman or as a gay man, like you're irrelevant and you become invisible. And it's like this unstoppable force that is happening. It's like you're aging and you feel like you're becoming, again, there's like obviously women can age very gracefully, they have so much wisdom, and you know, so many female authors have like, you know, blossom like when they're 50, 60, whatever. But there are these I don't know if I've talked about them before, these interviews about women saying like, yeah, once I turn a certain age, like people didn't even look at me at the grocery store. Like people just don't make way because they just like don't even register. Um,
Mhm.
and so even though aging can come with a lot of things, like even now I'm like, oh my God, I was so dumb when I was 20, even though we are like technically hotter or whatever.
Mhm.
It is sort of like you're putting on the sunscreen kind of hoping that it'll just like make it last longer. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, that is the darkest way I've ever seen sunscreen.
Oh Lord.
I, you know, and it's not a wrong thought. I'm sure it goes through a lot of people's
Well,
heads.
listen, I also have
I've had that
clinical
thought.
depression, so
Right, right. Yeah, and you know, I was thinking about this morning for something not related to sunscreen at all, but it was more mental health stuff with a friend, and um, my friend and I, we both woke up with a terrible night's sleep, and she was very cranky, and I was very jolly. And it's hard to compare the night's sleep, and you know, maybe I had better sleep, but we were both not 100%. And she was very upset that she was not 100%, and I was okay with not being 100%. And I think that's the difference, right? It's the perspective on it. It's that we're both not doing great this morning, but I'm okay with that. And I've come to terms with it earlier on in the day that allows me maybe some more benefit. And so I think it's the same with
you lower the
sunscreen.
expectations for yourself.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's the same with sunscreen and all beauty care in general, is that there is only so much that it can do. And you're gonna lose that fight 100% of the time against time. And so you gotta accept that. Knowing that sunscreen's your best bet.
Yeah. Yeah. It's oh my God. It's like a losing battle that you have to keep fighting. And
Yeah.
I heard that phrase from, this is so random, from Paul Farmer. He's like a medical anthropologist who fights against like poverty and AIDS. And he was like, you know, you're always gonna lose the battle, but you have to keep fighting it. And that's what I feel like about
Yeah.
skincare. Oh my
Yeah.
God, so bad.
And I think a lot of that is society and social media and beauty standards that have pervaded skincare, right? And because if you think about your teeth, we all brush our teeth twice a day, and we're fine doing that, and we don't feel like it's a battle, and it's not anxiety provoking if you miss a session of teeth cleaning, and it's not anxiety provoking if you do it. But with skincare, it seems like it's anxiety provoking when you miss it or when you do it oftentimes. And so I think that is the ugly part of the beauty industry that is clawing its way into skincare, which I am not a big fan of, but I
Mm,
acknowledge, and I think I hope it steers in a good direction.
okay. So, okay, and this has to do with you were talking about gingers. Is that a politically correct term, or do you have to
I
redheads?
doubt it. I doubt it. And I apologize to any
No,
redhead
to the ginger
people
community.
out there, but I really like all of you. You're
Okay,
kind.
so part of the question is, has skin damage become more of an issue today because of environmental reasons like pollution? Like, is the ozone layer causing us to burn more? And I say that because I'm thinking, like, okay, it sounds like some people are very fragile when it comes to the sun. And I'm just wondering how their genes survived up to today. Like, I guess I want to say like the issue probably wasn't that big a deal like 3,000 years ago if there's still genders today.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. So, uh, to answer your first question, yes, there's a higher rate of skin cancer today than there has ever been, and there are plenty of factors that contribute to that. One major factor being the size of the ozone layer, and the fact that we have less protection from UV rays is increasing the amount of sun damage that we get, and thus increasing the rate of skin cancer. To answer your next couple of questions about our fragile population of lighter skinned people, they are most at risk. They are most at risk, and we're seeing them get skin cancer more often. But also we're diagnosing skin cancer more often. And so the rate is skewed in that regard, because also there is a bias, lead time bias, and that we're diagnosing skin cancer much earlier and much more often. In terms of mortality rates for skin cancer, it's hard to say
Mm,
whether it's good or bad, because one, it's good that we're diagnosing it much earlier, and but two, we're living much longer. And in the past, I'm sure back in the
right.
1600s, 1500s, you die at the age of 20 to 40. And
But you have
so, but
babies before,
you have babies before.
so the
So
genes
the genes pass
persist.
on. And by the time you die of skin cancer, you'll have been killed by three other things,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
War, famine,
Bubonic plague.
crazy, yeah, bubonic plague, right? Things that a pandemic that we don't make a vaccine for in a year, right? But nowadays we're living for a full century, and skin cancer makes a difference. And not only
Got it.
for death, but also it makes a huge difference in morbidity. So you have skin cancers like melanoma that can kill you. You have also squamous cell that can metastasize and kill you. But you also have skin cancers that don't move around. They won't
Mm,
kill you, but they will grow rapidly in one spot and just be a pain in the butt. They will look ugly. They will destroy surrounding tissue. They will take over. Let's say it grows on your nose, it'll destroy your whole nose. It won't kill you, but it'll really
mm.
disfigure you.
How do you treat, I guess you said there's different types, but what are the main treatments for skin cancer and what's the outlook? Is that how you say?
Yeah, the outlook, the prognosis,
Yeah.
the main treatment is cutting it out. If a skin cancer, you find it, you get checked by your dermatologist regularly, which everyone should. You find a skin cancer, you cut it out. There are certain types of skin cancer that are able to move throughout the body. Like most other cancers in our body, they can metastasize. They can either spread through the blood or they can spread locally, and they can destroy other parts of our body, other tissues, other organ systems. And once they spread far enough, it is very difficult to treat them. And at that point, you can't cut them out because they're not in one spot. So you have to treat them with chemotherapy, you have to treat them with radiation, forms that we use for other cancers. At that point, it pretty much functions like a normal cancer.
Got it. And so what you're saying is like today we kind of find them before that happens, or is that still a common thing that you kind of like? Do you often see people who come in and you're like, this is super advanced?
That's a really good question. So, where I work, I serve a population that does not have access to healthcare enough. And so when they come in, oftentimes there is some advanced disease that could have been treated, could have been cut out, and now it has taken over and it's either going to kill them or they're going to lose a foot or part of their face. And that is the best treatment at this point,
You can
unfortunately.
have your limbs amputated for
Yeah,
it's
I have a
I,
patient right now that we are working with a rare type of skin cancer that is very unfortunate, and he's going to lose his foot. But if he got treated very early, it would have been a very easy procedure just to cut it out. And that is the unfortunate part of not having access for all of our citizens and people that we have in this
yeah.
country. And that's really sad. And so, what's more sad, and we can talk about this all day, is that it affects a certain look of people in our country. And so when it's such a strong pattern, we have to address that, and we have to figure out a system that takes care of especially people of color. And I think especially in the derm world, people of color have been left behind
Mhm.
because, like we talked about, we are less at risk for skin cancer. And so when they created skin cancer screening, when they test sunscreen right now, it is tested on lighter skin. It is not tested on my skin. It's maybe probably not tested on your skin. It's tested on our beloved gingers and our beloved blonde people, right? And so we need to figure out a way to educate the skin of color population, the melanin rich population. And that's what I hope to do. And that's what I hope we're doing here and all my work, that not just because your parents didn't have skin cancer and your grandparents didn't have skin cancer and you don't know what skin cancer is, doesn't mean you can't get it. And two, there's other things that you can get in your skin that's not just skin cancer. So it's worth a
Mm.
look. So if something looks funny, go to an expert. And I know your parents probably have never been to a dermatologist, and your cousins and your grandparents have never been to a dermatologist, but they're out there, and they're getting trained more and more on melanin rich skin. And there's people like me who work almost exclusively with melanin rich skin. So it's worth going to.
And so do you think I guess I'm wondering, in terms of products being tested, there's clearly a bias, as in there is in most science. In terms of like, I guess just information that people have, like, I think, do you see that there are certain myths around like sunscreen and skin cancer, like patients just saying sort of like Black people don't need to wear sunscreen. I know like a white person who was very confused when she saw a Black friend putting on sunscreen, and it was like, do you know what I mean? So like, do you see
Yeah.
that being a thing? Sort of like,
Oh yeah. Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I guess not
And
cultural myths, but yeah.
yeah. Did you put on sunscreen when you were younger?
I did if we were going out, like to play, just because like we could burn. And I remember my mom saying like, you have to wear sunscreen every day, and she got me a sunscreen, and I never paid attention because I was like, this is really annoying. But my mom is pretty fair, and she has a lot of spots from the sun, and she's always like trying to have us not have them. But I think for my dad's side of the family, we just tan. So I do have some freckles from the sun, but I think she was very much more aware, like her whole family, so like has a lot of sunspots.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's good. That's probably more education than what I had. And my mother was a pediatrician, and I put on sunscreen when we went to the beach. But
Mhm.
other than that, I played tennis and basketball and soccer my whole life, and I never wore sunscreen when I'd run outside. And so, but I will tell you one story is that my freshman year of high school, I was getting so dark from the sun because I would play so much tennis and soccer and basketball. And I was getting so dark, and I was turning like metallic sheen purple. Like I would get dark, and I would not burn. I would just get darker and darker. And I asked my mom. I started cross country in California, and I asked my mom beginning of freshman year. I was like, please get me the strongest sunscreen you can find, and she got me SPF 80. And I wore that thing every single day for 3 months of cross country. And I have never been darker in my entire life. I was just pitch black, night dark. And it made no sense. And I finished the entire bottle.
Pitch black.
And pitch black. And I finished the entire bottle. And I looked at, I was a stupid kid. I looked at the bottle at the end of finishing it, and it said for tanning. It was a sunscreen for tan. It was a tanning sunscreen. I freaked out. I screamed at my mom. I didn't know what I was doing, and
She
I'm sure it
probably
was my
felt
own
so
fault.
horrible, but
She
at that
felt,
moment,
she
you're
felt
like,
awful.
you
She felt
screwed me
awful.
over.
Yeah,
You
but I
were
was like,
Regina George
Chris,
when she discovers that the diet bars that she's been eating are actually to refeed hungry children.
yes, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Oh man, I was so sad. I mean, I didn't really care about my skin
Yeah,
that much, but oh man, I was just like the exact opposite of what I wanted. But
right.
that's how little education. And my mother's a pediatrician, right? Her whole job was to promote sunscreen in California to kids, right? And it was back in the she was a pediatrician in the 80s and the 90s and 2000s when sunscreen was just being developed. And so she was as educated as anybody at the time. But for skin of color, there was so little education out there. There was so little knowledge to be educated on. There was no research in it. And up till in the last 5 years, there was nothing for sun protection for skin of color. So the mineral sunscreen, awesome. Tinted sunscreen, even better. Now, if we're doing shades of sunscreen, even better. There's so many reasons to use it that if you were to use SPF 15, if I were to use SPF 15 every single day, a tinted mineral sunscreen, my rate of skin cancer is next to zero. It's going to be so difficult for me to get skin cancer because already I have protection that is natural. I do not know a single family relative who's ever gotten skin cancer. And so I have no awareness of it. But if I do this little extra bit and I teach my kids how to do it and I teach the next generation how to do it, there's no reason we can abolish skin cancer for our population, at least, right? And that's the least we can do. And it's not that hard. And it helps with pigmentary issues, which is great.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like skin cancer is less of an issue in terms of like the rate of skin cancer in like Black and brown populations. but when it happens, it's worse because there's no awareness around it, right? Like, I
Absolutely.
yeah. So it's probably
Absolutely.
like more advanced.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's more advanced when you find it. Also, I put out this paper with Dr. Chung and the Drexel research group a few years ago on transplant patients. And what we looked at was immunosuppressed patients who have gotten a solid organ transplant. They've gotten a heart or a liver or a kidney transplant. And now they are on immunosuppressive medication so that their transplant doesn't fight back and their body doesn't fight their transplant. And what that does is it lowers your defense mechanisms. And so you're much more likely to get cancer. The most common type of cancer is skin cancer. And so the rate of skin cancer increases by an insane amount, up to 20 to 40 times, depending on the type of skin cancer you're looking at. So what we found was that our Black patients, our brown patients, they were getting skin cancer and they were dying from it because they had no idea what skin protection is like. And they were getting it much later than our white patients. Our white patients were still getting much, much more, but our Black and brown patients were getting it much later. They were getting diagnosed later, and so their mortality rate was higher. Not only that, is that there are other factors that start skin cancer other than the sun. So for Black and brown patients, it's commonly HPV. So for any type of cancer to happen, you need it's called a two-hit hypothesis. You need 2 points of damage to your skin. You need one, could be sun, and two is often a mutation that happens spontaneously or more sun. Another way to do it is an infection like HPV that can damage the skin enough that with HPV and the sun, maybe a little bit or none at all, you can get cancer. And so there's HPV induced skin cancer that happens in the groin, the genitals, we found it on Black men, we found it on brown women, that anybody can get this. And it happens more often in that population, and they're checked less because they're not coming into a dermatologist. Because our white patients know our uncle had skin cancer, my grandfather had skin cancer, my aunt had skin cancer, cousin had skin cancer. They're so aware of skin cancer that they're coming into a dermatologist, they're checking their body, they're checking their moles. Brown and Black, I get moles, I don't look at them. I don't have anybody else look at them. I'm a dermatologist.
Yeah.
And so that is how little awareness that we have. And and we cannot underestimate how much of our upbringing influences our behavior. And it is very difficult to break. And so that is something that we need to make ourselves aware of. When you have a partner, you can check your partner's skin. You're looking at them all day. You're cuddling.
I've literally been saying that I will die sooner than my sister because I don't have someone to check my moles. And then my sister's like, Andrew doesn't pay attention to my moles.
Yeah. And you just gotta make a mole map. Yeah. And she's gotta give him a mole map for their anniversary. I think that's a good plan.
Right. But yeah, that is something that you kind of need someone to help you out with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm like
help
taking pictures. What was I gonna say? With the HPV, is that so? You said it's two hit hypothesis. So you need to have like HPV and the sun hitting the area, or not really?
You don't need the sun. We have found HPV induced skin cancer in the genital area where you get very little sun.
Okay.
You need a second hit. It can be a mutation, and mutations happen spontaneously.
Okay. That's the second part. I thought it was like that. And so is the intervention sort of trying to like with patients who have transplants to just tell them like are they like really aware that that's a risk or something? Because I've never heard about I've also never had a transplant, but
and that's the thing, even with our transplant patients, they are not aware, right? And that's why we did the study, and that's why we published it, and we published a follow-up study specifically for the HPV cancer. And our goal was to educate transplant centers around the country on this issue and to bring them up to speed so they can bring their patients up to speed, because we've found that patients are dying from this and we're severely affected by this, morbidity, not just mortality. And so that was our job and our mission at the time. And I think we did a pretty good job of it. And Dr. Chung is continuing that work, and she's very passionate about transplant research. I have not continued transplant research since, but have continued my skin of color research with her. And the current center I'm with, we do not do transplants. And so I don't have the luxury of contributing that information. But I hope what we're doing here reaches enough people that if you are skin of color and you do get a transplant, you're already educated. Right? I think that's the next step, is to educate our population, regardless of their circumstance, very young, about realistically what their chances are. Because I'm not going to stand here and say that we will get skin cancer like a ginger will get skin cancer. I do not think that is fair to say, right? I think that is misleading. And I think these companies that say that we all have the same skin and that we can all get skin cancer, that's wrong. It's yes, that's right. That is 100% correct, but it is not practical, because I cannot stand here and tell a kid that that two kids with different skin color, that they are exactly the same. We have to be realistic about it. And if we're realistic, we can still be practical and apply our sunscreen at a reasonable rate, right? I don't need SPF 50, something super thick. If I have SPF 15 and I apply it every single day and I'm comfortable with it, that is my ideal.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, that was one of the last of my questions. So this is just for me, like how extreme is the sun effect? Because I like I was telling you, like I wake up at noon now. I have a new job that keeps me up until like 3 a.m. Like, is it true that the first thing you have to do in the morning is like put on sunscreen? Like, does it work like that?
It does. It does technically work like that. As in you are getting sun effect.
So if I were white, if I were a redhead, I would have to go to sleep with SPF on so that I could wake up with it.
Yeah, I wouldn't go to that extreme. I don't think that's practical. Everybody has blinds, right? You're not getting that much sun into your
I
room.
need the blackout blank. For sure.
Also, if we're talking skin cancer or sun damage, it has to be enough UV dosage.
No, I'm
in
talking
order to
aging.
get you
I'm
that.
talking aging.
Even for aging, you still need enough UV damage, because your body is collecting all these free radicals and it's cleaning up the mess that's being made. And so the less sun damage that you're exposed to, less sun dosage you're exposed to, the more capacity your body has to clean it up. But if you're baking in a Florida sun,
and I do want to plug the sun a little bit before we close this out, because I did have a vitamin D deficiency at one point from being so scared of the sun that, you know, there are vitamin D supplements because it helps with depression and mood, but you know, going outside is not the worst thing in the world.
It is not. It is not. And at no point will I tell you to be afraid of the sun. I personally absolutely love the sun. Come from California, and I live in Chicago, and I now appreciate how much the sun means because of the number of months I've spent in darkness in this place. And I absolutely love Chicago, but their winters are real. And I make fun of Chicago people a lot because I don't think it's as real as they say. It's not that bad, but it is real. It's dark. So yeah, the sun is great. You need vitamin D. It also just makes you feel good, right? We know the sun really activates so much in our body, and
so wear the sunscreen, but go outside. Yeah,
exactly. Again, it's like you're not going to be perfect. You're not going to look like Jennifer Aniston at 50. I wish I looked like Jennifer Aniston now.
I need the money.
Right. If you have, and again, we have to acknowledge that a lot of these celebrities, TikTok stars, Instagram stars, they have their personal dermatologists, they have plastic surgeons, they have professional makeup artists, they have people who take care of them all the time.
Preventative
eating
Botox.
Amazingly well. Yeah, preventative Botox. We got to talk about. They're doing a lot of other things that make them look young, but in terms of what you can do that costs nothing and is the best thing is sunscreen.
Yeah. Well, it's also, this is something like, it's their job to look good, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So if you're really good at your job, and also want to look like a celebrity, then it's gonna be a little hard.
Yeah. If you're not a celebrity, give yourself a break.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's all do that.
Yeah.
And give celebrities a break. Like, leave Britney alone. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Everyone needs a break.
All right. I'm gonna close this out. Please, if you enjoyed this podcast, rate, review, and subscribe. coming soon on iTunes, but definitely subscribe on Spotify or whatever platform you listen on. We are also on YouTube. So if you want to see our lovely faces, we're uploading full episodes, so you can check that out. The account is also Get Into Your Skin. Send in your questions to getintoyourskinpod@gmail.com or DM them to the Instagram, Get Into Your Skin Pod. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.